Let me pass it to you, Russ. You founded your own organization, right? So started small to begin with. How did an organization, or the organization, how did it support you as an innovator, even though it was you, I would assume, to begin with?
Extending from just the organization, I think it's also the ecosystem which has the community that you're working with as in the centerpiece, right? So what helped us the most was actually having a very open ear to listen to the people who we were going to sell products to. And I think I'll give a short example. Back in the days when solar revolution started in the early 2000s, mid 2005, 2006, we all designed a solar lantern. And we work with the BOP, base of the pyramid customers. And our goal at that point was to make things very cheap. And it's logical that if you make it cheap, people would buy it. And it's the BOP, the whole argument about shampoos in smaller sachets and the whole, you wanted to extend it. So we did the same, and we went and we designed a product which we thought was excellent. The things that we forgot was, number one, we've never lived through a dark home for majority of our life. And number two, we didn't consider the aspirational value that a person puts to something that he buys or something that he uses. In about a year and a half, when we were not growing anymore, we were confused because we thought, we made this light and it's only $3, and we won this award from Stanford, and we won this, we won that, and why don't these people buy it? So we had to adopt an approach where we went and started living in the villages just to see why don't they use it. I got a direct feedback one day from this lady, and she said, in your house, you walk in and you hit the button and the light goes on and you have a fan and everything. But in my house, you want me to use this weird shaped light. Just because I'm poor doesn't mean I get whatever you guys feel I want. And that's sort of, suddenly opened up our eyes, and we realized that it's keeping the customer center to whatever innovation you do is perhaps the most important thing. It's not in a lab, especially in the kind of markets we work in. So then we went back and we sat and we said, okay, what do you really want? She said, I want to have the dignity to walk into my house, switch on lights, and be able to pay according to whatever I can pay, but get what I really want and be a part of the whole environment that the whole country or the world is going towards. And that was an eye-opening thought, because then you don't think cheap all the time. You don't always think, hey, I know a technology and I can force it down people's throat.
And Anne, let me ask you, right? Is there, in large organizations, are they doing actively, I mean, I know that some are, but in your experience, were they participating with consumers and actually spending time, asking the farmers or whatever it is, hey, what is it that you actually want, rather than saying, here's a product, let's see if it sells?
I think that that's something that varies quite a bit by firm, right. And also by industry. So one of the things, if I think of my experience at DuPont, I mean, DuPont has a history of being incredibly innovative. They invented nylon, all kinds of materials. And if you think back to it, that was at a time when chemistry was an emerging science. It's a mature science now, but it was an emerging science at that time. And they invented materials that were so disruptive, so completely different from anything else that was available, that the materials almost sold themselves. So one of the things that I noticed when I came to DuPont and had been there a while, and I had a conversation with the CEO, and DuPont called itself a science company. And I said, Chad, I'll say this behind closed doors. DuPont is not a science company.
You're being taped.
Okay. Well, this was a long time ago. I said, DuPont is a manufacturing company.
Right.
And it has the culture of a manufacturing company. I mean, I've come from science companies, and it's a different culture. And we talked about it. And really, what came through that is that you had most of the senior people in DuPont had come up as what they called string men, people in polyester, nylon, etc. And they had cut their teeth as business people at a time when literally they didn't have to go out and sell their product. They took consignments for their products. They would say, yes, so and so carpet company will give you an allotment of this much nylon. Fast forward 20 or 30 years from that, and you have a company that doesn't have the instincts to ask those questions of the customer, right? And so they're still developing really cool, neat materials. But then what ends up happening is because they don't have those instincts to understand the end customer, it's a B2B company, right? They sell to businesses. They don't capture the value. Just an example, DuPont made all the ink for Hewlett-Packard for their printers. The printer division for Hewlett-Packard in the late 90s, early aughts, made at least 90, some people would say more than 100% of their profits. Hewlett-Packard sold those cartridges for $20, $30 a piece. DuPont got 15 cents per cartridge. So, you have these examples of, as a firm, this is kind of a long way to say this, but a firm can evolve and can evolve a certain kind of approach to innovation and product development that works in its time, which DuPont did. And then the world changed. Chemistry became a mature science. In order to capture value from chemistry, you had to go downstream. And their previous success actually hindered them from becoming what they needed to capture the value as the science evolved. So, and I think this is why you see the sort of, quote, dinosaurs and whatnot, that whole kind of history of companies.
Len, let me ask you, right? The inspiration, I would assume that a lot of your end consumers are saying, I just like my glaucoma to be fixed. That there isn't necessarily the same kind of variety of insights or things like that, but I would love to get your thoughts on where does that inspiration come from for new ideas?
I've always said that my team has a lot of solutions. We're just not exposed to the problems. So we have to team up quite often with physicians, and we listen to them. And I get called maybe once a week with surgeons who run into problems, and they ask me questions. And sometimes they have an idea which has a market greater than a dozen a year. And if it makes sense, we'll begin to pursue it. It's difficult in the biomedical area to start from scratch and say, hey, this guy needs a glaucoma device. I'll spend a minute on the glaucoma device because that evolved because I had invented a material that the body doesn't recognize as being foreign. And we realized when we put it on the body, the body's reaction to a foreign particle is it encapsulates it and tries to move it out of the body. But if there's no degradation, no impurities, the body doesn't know it's there. So this became the coating on the drug-eluting stent. So when the drug is out, you don't want the body to know there's anything there. So it kind of masks the stent. I sat down with one of the scientists, and we put our feet up and said, well, where can we use this? So he brought in a glaucoma surgeon, and the glaucoma surgeon said, if you can keep a tube the size of an eyelash open, we can shunt fluid from the anterior chamber, to just underneath the clear part of the eye, which is the conjunctiva. He said, it's never been done before because these tubes encapsulate. So there's the seed. We tried it in rabbits. It worked. We went on. You can't really easily try that in the United States for reasons I won't get into in an audience of lawyers. So we went to other countries where, it's the second leading cause of blindness. So we did all of our homework to make sure it's safe. But eventually you have to try it in humans and you have to show it works, because if you don't show it works, you're not going to get venture capital funding. So we showed it worked, and then the question is raising the $60 million it's taken now to run it through the FDA trials. But it was an inventor, a new material, a physician with a problem that we had to fix that led to it.